What's going on, guys? This is Elite Sports Talk. I'm Charlie B. I'm the host. And, we got football back underway. The NFL kicks off in about 5 days. It's just about midnight right now on the East Coast, so actually 4 days. Um, and, there's so much going on. College football is in full swing. Obviously, it started last week with week 0. Now, there was a full slate of games on today. And honestly, even though I love football, I probably wouldn't have did this if it was NFL on today. However, it was college football. And my team played already this week. So I actually started the day off watching some basketball, some Euro basketball. And, like I said, college football, it's great. NFL is king. But, when you have the best basketball player in the world playing basketball, it doesn't matter if it's in the NBA or in the Euro League. And technically, it's not even the tournament yet for FIBA. Right now, it's only the group play. But I watched Nikola Jokic and Team Serbia, and they played Team Latvia. Man, that was a great game. For most of the game, it seemed like Serbia was just going to take off running. And every time they had, a 10-point lead or something like that, a few possessions, Latvia kept coming right back into the game. And just like when it's, watching Jokic in the NBA, whenever he was resting for a few minutes here and there, that's when Latvia really was coming back. Kristaps Porzingis was doing very well. And they had a couple of other people that I've never even heard of on Team Latvia that was also doing really well. But at the end, Serbia ended up winning again. So now they stay undefeated so far in the summer between the warm-up games and now with the group play games. And Jokic had 39 points and 10 rebounds and 4 assists. And again, it's just so great whenever you get to watch a player like that. Even back in the day, if you're able to watch, if you were around when MJ was playing. And that's what it is. When you watch Nikola Jokic, it never ceases to amaze. But yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up. And again, I believe they have another game, Team Serbia, today, Sunday, my time, East Coast, because it's past midnight now. But now to get to some football, to NFL, I wanted to do a little rundown with some of the depth charts, and I'm going to do some, I got the schedules, and I am going to project the record of every team in the NFC North and every team in the AFC North. And I'm going to start with the Chicago Bears. Now, this is going to be the second year for Caleb Williams, quarterback for Chicago. And obviously, it's going to be a whole new offense now that Ben Johnson has took over as the head coach. And we've seen how potent the offenses were with Ben Johnson every year that he was in Detroit. And, not just going off of that, but also Declan Doyle is their offensive coordinator for Chicago, which was the Denver Broncos tight end coach of 23 and 24. And then they also brought in Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator, who was most notably recently with the New Orleans Saints as their head coach between 2022 and 2024. And other than that, he's been around the NFL for probably 2 decades. He was head coach before, and he was also defensive coordinator for several teams throughout his tenure in the league. But when you look at this roster, the way that they, put this roster together, they have so much talent around Caleb Williams from the skill positions, from the running back, DeAndre Swift, that's already been there now this will be his second or third year there, who, fun fact, actually also started his career in Detroit under Ben Johnson. So, this is going to be, I think, a great thing for DeAndre Swift. They also have a plethora of wideouts and tight ends now. They got DJ Moore now, who's going to be in his second year for the Bears. Rome Odunze, who was a rookie last year, who, has started to build a little bit of chemistry with Caleb. And then they also drafted the rookie Luther Burden III. They also have Cole Kmet, who's actually a very underrated tight end in my opinion. And then they drafted Colston Loveland, who is looking like he's going to be one of the better young tight ends, one of the best rookies this season. And then they revamped that whole offensive line. So, again, I mean, you just can't say enough about how great Ben Johnson's offenses have been in the past and what he's going to try to do with this newly revamped regime, if you will, for the Chicago Bears. And the only thing that I really think that goes, against Chicago is the division that they're in is such a tough division from top to bottom. I mean, you look at it last year, the Green Bay Packers, the Detroit Lions, and the Minnesota Vikings were all in the playoffs, and they all won over 11 games, I believe it was, last season. So, it's really just, it's going to come down to how well the defense plays, because they also have a lot of great defensive guys on this team, especially with the defensive backs. But they got to win a lot of division games. If they wind up only winning 2 games in the division, it's going to be kind of hard to come back from. And I don't know if we could see them, being in the conversation of being a possible playoff team come the end of the year. But with that being said, I ran down their schedule, and I feel like I was a little generous with some of the wins that I gave them. I believe that they are going to be 9-8 by the end of the season, and I think that they'll wind up probably finishing in 3rd place in the division. But hey, that's just my opinion. I mean, you never know. And when it comes to the defense, Dennis Allen, I feel like he doesn't really get enough credit for how good of a defensive coordinator he really is. As a head coach, yes, he wasn't great, but he also was head coach of the Saints, and he really plays. You see how he was. You see how he played in Michigan. I didn't really watch a whole lot of Michigan. Obviously, he did win his last year there before getting drafted. He did win the national championship, but they didn't really have him do a whole lot in terms of passing. They were more of a ground and pound team, which is that's kind of a hardball thing. We've seen that a lot over the years. And so, yeah, man, I don't know how they're going to look. I know in the beginning of the year, obviously, Jordan Addison's going to be suspended for, I believe it's the first 4 games of the season. Justin Jefferson is obviously the best wideout in the National Football League today. He is still nursing a soft tissue, I think it's a hamstring injury right now, which he should be fine. And, even without those 2 receivers, they did just go and trade for their hometown product in Adam Thielen, brought him back from Carolina. And so, yeah, I'm also eager to see how that's going to look. I mean, the man's 35 years old, but if you paid attention last year to Carolina, he still looked just as dominant in a short sample size because he missed a bunch of games. But he looked just as dominant with Carolina as he did in the past with the Vikings. Then they have TJ Hawkinson, who's coming back from an injury, and the 2 previous years before that, he was lights out. He was like a top 5 tight end in the league. So they have a whole lot, man, to be excited about. And, that offensive line, too. Christian Darrisaw on one side, Brian O'Neill on the other. Then they got Donovan Jackson, and then they got Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, both from Indy in the offseason. that's going to be one of the better offensive lines in the league. And we already know about the defensive line. Jonathan Allen, Harrison Phillips, Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Greenard, uh, and then those linebackers, how great Andrew Van Ginkel played last season. And they have, their own Iron Man in Harrison Smith, who's still number one, number two, top safeties in the league, really. I mean, yeah, he's getting older, but the man, he's like the Energizer Bunny for them. But yeah, so obviously we know how great of a head coach Kevin O'Connell is. Wes Phillips has been there as their OC since 2022. They still got Brian Flores as their DC. We've seen all that pressure that he brought last year, how great that defense was. They needed to clean a few things up, obviously, with pass defense. But yeah, man, what it really comes down to is, again, how tough the NFC is going to be, how tough that their whole division, the NFC North, is going to be. And I have Minnesota, again, I know I'm going to hear a lot of backlash, but I got Minnesota going 7-10. But it's fine, it's okay. Because it's J.J. McCarthy's first season. Right? He's going to have to get, he's going to have to gain some chemistry with those receivers. It's going to be kind of hard to do right away. I mean, you can only assume he only had so much work with Hawkinson in the offseason. I don't know exactly when Hawkinson felt that he was 100%. I know he played some games last year. I don't know if he was 100% then. Again, Justin Jefferson's been nursing that hamstring injury. We know Addison's going to be out the first 4 weeks. Now he's going to have to, gain a rapport with Adam Thielen now coming in. But they have a bunch of weapons. Aaron Jones is another year older. They did, however, get another running back, though, in the offseason from San Fran. So, Jordan Mason. So we'll see how it goes. But that's just my projection. That's just my opinion. I think Minnesota is going to be closely behind the Bears, and we'll finish 7-10 and fourth in the division. Now let's get on to the AFC North. Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson, who in my opinion is probably the best quarterback in the National Football League right now in terms of, all skill sets. And what he did last year was so impressive. I mean, I get it. The whole thing with them is what they lack in the postseason. But Lamar is a beast, man. And now that they had Derrick Henry, this is his second year now he's going to be with Baltimore. That is a hell of a threat to have to contain both Lamar and Derrick Henry. Then they went out and added to the receiving core by getting DeAndre Hopkins. Yes, he's another year older. But man, he actually did some impressive things for Kansas City down the stretch last season. So, I mean, we don't really have to talk about it. We know how talented this team is, offense and defense, and they went out and they got Jair Alexander, who actually is a college teammate of Lamar. So, we'll just get down to the brass tacks, which is I have them going 12-5, and I have them going 5-1 in the conference, which is substantial. Because they're playing Buffalo, Kansas City, they're playing Houston, they're playing Pittsburgh. Well, Pittsburgh they play, it's in their division. But yeah, so I mean they're playing right there 3 playoff teams from a year ago. And some of the other games, aren't that great. I mean, the Jets, we don't really know how the Jets are going to be yet. We don't really exactly... We kind of have a feeling of what the Dolphins can be, that maybe they can regain some of that magic back from 2 or 3 seasons ago. But yeah. So, for the most part, the most difficult teams that they're going to be playing this year is that rematch with Buffalo and that rematch with the Chiefs. They didn't really change anything with the coaching staff. Zach Orr is still their DC. Todd Monken is still the OC. So, again, man, it's just going back to how it was last year. All they did was just add to that. So, if anything, they're going to be more dominant. Cincinnati Bengals. Whew. All right, so Cincinnati, we know the story. We've seen what happened in the offseason. Trey Hendrickson finally signed a deal. It wasn't what he... It was a little under what he deserved, quite frankly. I think that he probably should be, I don't know, second or third on the list in terms of, top paid edge rushers. But, he's happy that he got that $15 million raise for his annual salary. So I guess if he's happy, we should be happy. Cincinnati, you guys, you're lucky that you were able to bring him back. On top of the fact that you got T. Higgins a new deal, and Jamar Chase a new deal. And, they did switch their defensive coordinators. So now they had moved on from Lou Anarumo, and now they got Al Golden, who is Notre Dame's defensive coordinator from 2022 to 2024. They still have Dan Pitcher as their OC. Zach Taylor is still the head coach. And the whole thing with Cincinnati, we've seen in preseason, I believe it was in all 3 games, they had Burrow playing sometime, and they had Jamar playing, because the whole thing is they want to try to get out to a fast start. Over the past 6 years, they started out terrible the first 2 to 3 weeks every single season. So you want to try and, get ahead of that by doing what they did. And hopefully it'll work out for them, because, again, you can't say enough about all the weapons that Burrow has with that offense. And now with the defense, they lost a couple of people. Personally, I think they should have re-signed the one linebacker that they had, Jermaine Pratt. He had an insane amount of tackles. I think he had 150 tackles last year or something like that. So you're losing that production right there, which is why it was so pivotal for them to make sure that they brought Trey Hendrickson back in, because, again, we know the story. He led the league not just last year, but the year before that. So over the span of the past 2 years, nobody has had more sacks in the league than Hendrickson. And then they also made sure to right their wrong with the rookie Shamar Stewart. So, that could be a key contributor, too, for that defensive line. They don't really have, in my personal opinion, they don't really have the greatest defensive backs, but hopefully they made up for that by making sure that they did what they needed to do to get both Stewart and Hendrickson under contract there. But now let's go to what I believe their record is going to be. They have a pretty tough schedule. They're playing... Let's see. They're playing the NFC North, who we just talked about how tough that is. So I have them having, a few losses. I got them with 3 losses and actually 4 losses in a row from from weeks 4 to 8. They're playing at Denver, which last year we've seen. That's actually a Monday night game, week 4 at Denver. Last year we've seen how that turned out when they played Denver. Denver actually should have got the win. They ended up going to overtime, and Cincinnati, because of their offense, not the defense, because of the offense and Joe Burrow, they were able to not just stick with Denver, but they were able to take Denver down, which is huge. Because, again, that's why it's such a big deal for their defense to be on par with their offense, because we know what their offense is capable of. But when you're playing a team like Denver and they have the defense that they have, and you're able to still throw all over the field, you just want your defense to, they don't have to completely stop anybody, but at least contain one of these teams because, I mean, in retrospect, as great as their defense was, going into last season, you would have looked at that schedule and been like, oh, that's an automatic win against Denver, a rookie quarterback. But hey, man, we've seen what happened. So this year, I have Denver besting them at home on Monday Night Football. I also have Cincinnati going back home and losing to Detroit the following week, then losing the week after that at Green Bay, and then going back home once again and losing to Pittsburgh. But with that being said, stay calm. I do have them going 10-7. I have them going 3-3 in their division. But 10-7, that's in my opinion, that's good enough for them to get a playoff spot this year, which is where they really should have been last year. Now let's go to the Cleveland Browns. Yeah. So, okay, they went from 5 quarterbacks down to 4. Obviously, Deshaun Watson's not probably going to play at all this year. I really don't know that, but it doesn't seem like it at least. Flacco is going to be the starter going forward, week 1. I don't believe that he'll be the starter all season long. I think at some point they'll probably wind up going to either Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur. I think that Shedeur should probably outright win their starting job before the season ends at some point. I just don't know when. Kenny Pickett, we've seen he ended up getting traded. And like I said, Deshaun Watson, we don't really expect him to play this year. I don't know if he'll ever play another snap for the Cleveland Browns again going forward. The running back situation is an interesting one for Cleveland. They got Jerome Ford, who's going to be the starter. Then they got Quinshawn Judkins. And he never even signed a deal. He never even signed a contract. So, I mean, he had the allegations, the off the field stuff. But yeah, so I don't really know how that's going to go, because what I read the other day was that he could possibly wind up, I don't know how true it is, but there was an article out there saying that he could possibly wind up going back to college. And if he does, then the following year, next year, Cleveland would just own the rights to him, because it's not like he would go back into the draft. And that was the whole situation that they were talking about with Shamar Stewart, too. But yeah, so they got Ford, they got Judkins, and then they got Dylan Sampson, who's the other rookie running back. And I know in camp and in preseason, they were saying that Sampson also looked really good. Like he could possibly be a starter for them. So, yeah, that's wild. They even without Quinshawn, they got at least 2 guys that look like they can split the load if need be, or if Ford goes down, Sampson looks good enough to them, at least, that he could wind up possibly being a starter. Then they have, they ended up cutting Deontay Johnson, but they got Jerry Jeudy off that, 1,200-yard season or whatever it was, and Cedric Tillman. David Njoku has been an up-and-coming, highly talented tight end. We've been talking about him for a while now. Their defense, we know what we get with their defense. They were able to get another deal done with Myles Garrett after it looked like he wanted to leave. Made him the top-paid edge rusher up until, what we just seen with Micah Parsons getting paid after getting traded to Green Bay. So, with all that being said, just like I was saying with the NFC North, the AFC North is another one of those extremely tough from top to bottom divisions. So I think Cleveland's going to do a little bit better than they did last year. I'll give them credit where credit is due. They still have, the same DC and Jim Schwartz, who's one of the better DCs in the league. Their OC is still Tommy Rees. Cleveland's tight end coach and passing game coordinator last year. So actually, he just had an upgrade there. And Kevin Stefanski, we know he's a 2-time coach of the year. So, it's just tough because the division you're in, 1-2. Joe Flacco is 41, 42, I think will be. So that's not a team that you would have in the conversation of playoffs. But I think that they'll be a formidable 7-10. And we'll keep it moving. We'll get to Pittsburgh and the other 40-plus-year-old quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. They still got Mike Tomlin as the head coach. Arthur Smith is still the OC. Terrell Austin still the DC. And he got plenty of help in the offseason for his defense. So, not only on the defense, but on the offense as well, they got help. Aaron Rodgers signed with them. DK Metcalf came over from Seattle. Got a big deal. They ended up cutting, I believe they cut Robert Woods. But they got Calvin Austin. They got Roman Wilson. They got some guys here and there. And plus, I seen earlier today, I don't know if there's any truth to it or not, but I seen that possibly Aaron Rodgers reached out to Odell Beckham. So I guess we'll see what happens with that real soon, or not at all if it doesn't. And apparently Aaron Rodgers also made a phone call to Green Bay to see if he could, link up with one of his old receivers from there to come over. I believe what I seen with that, probably just another rumor, but I believe it was Romeo Doubs maybe. So we'll keep watch on that and see what happens. The offensive line is pretty decent for Aaron. I believe it's probably better than what he had last year with the Jets or the year before. And, Cameron Hayward right now, he's also another one that's looking like he wants a bump in pay. He's seen TJ Watt get that big deal. And so, I don't think it's going to affect anything. I think he's still going to be on the field. I don't think it's going to be anything big like that. But they have a lot of talent, too, on this defense, man. They got Nick Herbig. They got Patrick Queen. They got Alex Highsmith still. And then they obviously brought over Darius Slay. Then they got Jalen Ramsey in a trade. They still got Beanie Bishop Jr. I believe they re-signed him. Joey Porter Jr. They got Deshaun Elliott back. So there's a lot to like about Pittsburgh. And again, just like I've been saying about every other team so far, tough division. Tough. So I think that Steelers are going to be one of those teams at the end of the year where, they're probably going to wind up being tied with 2 or 3 other teams trying to make it in to the playoffs with one of those last 2 wildcard spots. I have them going 10-7 and 3-3 in their division. Okay, so now not only is it NFL season and we're all hyped to watch football, but also one of the things we do, a lot of us love fantasy football. So, a lot of, probably almost 95% of fantasy leagues have already drafted at this point. I actually had another draft earlier tonight before I came on. But I wanted to share some of my favorite fantasy picks for this year. So I'm going to do a couple of quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, right? And I'm going to break it down into 3 different categories. One is the first one, my favorite fantasy picks. Then I'm going to go over just a few rookies and second-year players that I think that we should be either drafting or, if we already did our drafts, maybe go out and just add some of these guys. And same thing for the sleepers. And so my first pick is going to be, now I have my own blog site, and I actually made a list for every position, top 25 quarterbacks, top 50 running backs, top 60 receivers, top 20 tight ends, and I think I did top 15 defenses. A lot of people, I believe, don't even draft more than one defense. And most leagues are 10 to 12 leagues anyway. But so, my first quarterback, I got Kyler Murray, and I actually have him ranked as the 9th best fantasy quarterback this season. And if you go back to last year he actually had, a pretty decent year. He had total scrimmage yards over 4,400 yards, and he also had 26 combined touchdowns between 5 rushing touchdowns and 21 passing touchdowns. And then the 2 years prior to that, 2022 and 2023, he obviously missed a lot of games. He played, the first 11 weeks in 2022. Then he had that injury. So, we didn't get to see him for only 8 games is all he played in 2023. But I think if you go back and look at what Kyler did in 2020, which was his second season in the league, he had 3,900 passing yards, 3,971, and he had 26 touchdowns. And then he also added in 819 yards on the ground with another 11 touchdowns. Guys, that's 47. That's almost 4,800 yards with 37 total touchdowns. That is why I'm saying this year, I would make sure, especially if you miss out on the first couple of guys, I would go after Kyler Murray. If you don't get Lamar, if you don't get Josh Allen, they go in like the first 2 to 3 rounds usually, maybe the 4th round, depending on what league you're in. But they normally go quick. Jaden Daniels is another one that goes quick. And then Burrow. Some people are drafting Hurts, I think, like right after Jaden Daniels. But so no need to fear. If you miss out on the first, tier and even some of the second tier, Kyler Murray, man, go after Kyler. He's going to have a really big year. My next pick for quarterback for one of my favorites is Bo Nix. And I have him ranked as my number 6 fantasy QB this year. And, again, just looking at what he did last year, 3,775 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, and then he added another 4 rushing touchdowns, 430 yards, plus, I don't know if people seen this or even remember, but he also had a receiving touchdown too. So, and Denver is kind of loaded now. Now it's going to be another year where he can, reclaim some of the chemistry that he had with his receiver, his old college receiver, Troy Franklin. We also have Marvin Mims Jr., who's probably going to be doing a lot of big things this year as his number 2 weapon. And then Cortland Sutton, obviously, is his number 1 guy. And they also added in their joker, if you will, as Sean Payton put it, in the tight end option, Evan Ingram, who led the league in total receptions just 2 years ago when he was with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They also got Pat Bryant in the draft this year. And from what Sean Payton was saying, Pat Bryant looks like I think he said that he compared him to Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas used to be on the Saints. So, hey man, and that offensive line, it's not just my opinion, because, yeah, I am a Denver Broncos fan, which is weird because, I live on the East Coast, but if you look on ESPN, you look at like the pass block win rate and the run block win rate, they have the Denver Broncos listed as number 1. So that's a huge thing, man. Like I said, Bo Nix, go out, take a chance. If you already did your draft, maybe somebody will be willing to deal Bo Nix for the right price. But that's my 2 favorite quarterbacks, Kyler and Bo. Now go on to running backs. No secret here, no surprise. You got to probably be a top 4, top 5 pick to draft him. But Jahmyr Gibbs, I actually have him ranked as my number 2 fantasy running back this year. And even though the offensive coordinator is going to be different, they still got to utilize Jahmyr Gibbs in a huge way. And one of the things I heard coming out of Detroit in the preseason was that they're looking to possibly utilize Jahmyr in the slot, maybe even out wide sometimes. There's going to be like a much larger percentage this year of having both Montgomery and Gibbs on the field at the same time. But yeah, man, I mean, last year he had 52 catches, 517 yards, and 4 touchdowns receiving. And then he also had 1,400 rushing yards with another 16 touchdowns. So they're going to utilize him in many ways. So, don't be scared to draft him. If you have one of the first 3, 4 picks and you don't get Jamar, you don't get Justin Jefferson, I mean, other than Jahmyr, the only other running back that I would say within the first couple of picks would be Bijan. Now let's go on to my other top running back that I love this year. I actually have him ranked as the number 15 fantasy option at running back. That is DeAndre Swift. And like I talked about earlier, DeAndre Swift is going to be back with head coach Ben Johnson, who was DeAndre Swift's OC every year that he was in Detroit until he went to Philly for that 1 year. But so when we go back and look, right, and again, this is another, what we just talked about with Jahmyr Gibbs, the production that he got in the passing game, that was Ben Johnson, right? So this is a similar type of a back, DeAndre Swift to Gibbs. So you already know he's going to use him in more than just running the ball with him. So let's see. His rookie year, he had 57 targets. He ended up getting 46 catches. His second season in Detroit with Ben Johnson, he had 62 catches, and he had 452 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, it's just, even in Philly, but that was, obviously a different guy, another 39. So, I mean, he's going to be utilized in more than one way. So, now's the time, guys. And he had over 1,100 yards his year in Philly. He's definitely going to outproduce that number with Ben Johnson. Total scrimmage yards. So, yeah, again. And you can get him at a cheap price. He's the 15th ranked running back. So, for me at least, I ranked him 15. I have him in 2 leagues already this year. And, I mean, if you already did your draft, more than likely, for whoever has drafted him, he's probably going to be the 3rd running back that person drafted, or the 2nd. So, maybe try to make a deal and get Swift, because I think he's going to have a huge year in that offense. Now, my top ranked receiver, not my top ranked, but one of my favorites rather, he's my number 15 ranked fantasy receiver for PPR leagues. I have Marvin Harrison Jr. We already talked about Kyler Murray, so obviously this makes sense. If you can do it, if you can pull it off, and you haven't had a draft yet, maybe try to stack, Harrison with Kyler. Last year he had 62 catches on 116 targets, almost just shy of 900 yards and 8 touchdowns. And it's going to get better, guys. It's going to get much better. This year, he could have a Pro Bowl type year in that offense. Now let's go on to my other top pick at receiver. I have him ranked as the 20th for PPR. And last year, he had the best season that he's had in terms of receptions in his career and yardage, the second best he's had since his second year in the league. And I'm talking about Denver Bronco, Cortland Sutton. And again, we just said with Harrison Jr., I already brought up Kyler Murray, so that made sense. I had Bo as my other guy, my other top pick for quarterback that you should go after this year. Cortland Sutton, if you can. I believe I did it already in one league. Try to pair the two of them together. Last year, Sutton had, again, I mean, he had 81 receptions. He had over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. He also actually threw a touchdown. It was the touchdown that Bo Nix received. So in the last 2 years, Sutton's actually had 19 total touchdowns. So, and it's only going to get better, man. And he's not, I mean, he's only 29. Yeah, like he's starting to, almost get to the point where it's like, oh, you're on the wrong side of 30, but not yet. And not only that, but he just got a brand new deal. So, I mean, he's going to be around for probably 4 or 5 more years. And it's only going to get better with Bo Nix. Now let's move on to the tight end position. This is definitely my top ranked tight end. I have him ranked number 1, and for great reason. I'm talking about the Cardinals tight end. Yes, another Cardinal, Trey McBride. So there's all this talk, and I've seen all these graphics on social media in the offseason. Brock Bowers is the best tight end in the league. Brock Bowers this, Brock Bowers that. I get it. The guy was great last year. However, he only had 1 more reception than my guy, and only a few more yards. He did have 4 more touchdowns. But in terms of, everything else, he's why I'm saying he is better, in my opinion, than Brock Bowers. Not by much. And when you look at it, and you compare the two teams, and what the Raiders have added in the offseason, I don't think that Brock Bowers is going to actually be able to replicate the production he had last year. However, for Trey McBride, I do believe that he can replicate the production that he had last year. Last year, he had 111 catches on 147 targets, and he did only have 2 touchdowns, but he had, guys, 1,146 yards. I mean, come on. And he also had a rushing touchdown. But the more impressive thing that people don't even realize, which is mind-blowing, Trey McBride has actually had the most receptions of any tight end combined the last 2 seasons with 192. And behind him is Travis Kelce with 190. And then behind him, at third, is Evan Ingram with 161. And like I said, the only thing you got to worry about, that you shouldn't have to worry about this year, is he only had 3 touchdowns last year. But that number is definitely going to go up. He's a big body guy. He's 6'4", 246. So he should get a lot of touchdowns in the red zone just because of his height and his body size. But also, man, he can break tackles too. So he'll get you some yak for fantasy. Anyway, so now let's go on to my other top tight end that I'm really pounding the table that people should be drafting or trying to trade for, I guess, is TJ Hawkinson. I have him as my 4th ranked tight end in fantasy this year. He has had 3 times in his career, he's had 3 seasons, about 100 or more targets. He has had 3 years with 700 plus receiving yards, and he's also had back-to-back 900 plus receiving yards, and that was prior to the injury, which took place last year. Or I'm sorry, 2 years ago it happened. He played 15 games in 2023, and then he ended up going down. And he didn't play until week 10 last year. But yeah, so he's trying to get back to form. I think so far in the offseason he's looked really good. And he also has 3 times in his career has had 5 or more touchdowns. And again, like I talked about earlier, with Justin Jefferson nursing the hamstring, Addison is suspended for the first 4 weeks of the season. They did go out and acquire Adam Thielen, but I do think that Hawkinson could quite possibly get, maybe around 80 receptions this year. He's going to get a boatload of targets, guys. So I would go out and I would get him if you can. any way, shape, or form. Like I said, I mean, not every draft has been completed. There's a couple of more. I mean, the first game isn't until Thursday. Some people even draft after the first, sometimes even second weekend of the season, which I think is weird. Probably a rarity, but it happens, man. Uh, Now we'll get into some of the rookie and second year guys. The first one I'm going to talk about is Cam Ward, the rookie quarterback out of Miami. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing this, guys, but he looked really good in the offseason. We know he was the first player drafted in the league this year. Tennessee looks like they could be slowly, it's going to take some time, but turning that team around. They have some weapons for him in that offense. So, I mean, hey, and I have him ranked as my number 21 fantasy quarterback for this year, just because he's a rookie and the what ifs. But so yeah, man, I would definitely try to add him. You know, whether you already did your draft in the waiver wire or towards the end of the draft. I've even had a draft or two where people took him insanely early. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. My other quarterback, which I actually have ranked 23rd in my quarterback rankings, it's also like an unknown, a what if factor. It's J.J. McCarthy. And again, when you look at both of the last 2 years that he played for Michigan, both seasons he had at least 2,700 yards. He had 22 passing touchdowns, and he only had 5 interceptions in 22, and then 4 interceptions the year he won the national championship. We didn't see him at all last year, obviously, because of the injury. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how long it takes him to get, acquainted with everything in that offense. And, I don't know, maybe he'll be one of these quick learners, like a Jaden Daniels or a Bo Nix. But he could also potentially wind up being like, well, I guess you can't really say he could be like a Caleb Williams, because Caleb Williams, I feel like, only didn't look as great as we wanted him to look because that offensive line was so terrible last year. I mean, the man was sacked like 60 times. So, yeah, under the running backs now. Ashton Jeanty, I have him as the number 6 ranked fantasy running back. And, he was incredible to watch. I'm actually a big fan for Boise State. And watching him last year rip off 2,601 yards, he fell about, I believe it was 17 yards shy of the all-time single-season rushing record in college history, held by Barry Sanders. And he had 29 touchdowns. And in terms of the scrimmage yards, the man had 2,739 scrimmage yards. But the most impressive thing about Ashton Jeanty, which is going to bring even more value to him with, fantasy football, is his yards after contact was actually more than the second leading rusher in all of college football last year. So think about that. That's incredible. Yeah, I'm not going to say any more. Just go out and get yourself an Ashton Jeanty. And then we got Bucky Irving next. Bucky Irving is my 9th ranked fantasy quarterback. We all seen what he did last year for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was the first time in many years, I think, that any Buccaneers running back had ran for 1,000 plus. He ended up with 1,100 yards, and he had 8 touchdowns as well, plus another 400 yards receiving, which is why he is one of the guys that I'm talking about. Rome Odunze, second-year receiver, again, for the Bears, and Caleb Williams. I think he's going to do levels better than what he was last year. I have him ranked as my 35th PPR wide receiver. And then we got the rookie receiver, who was widely known as the best receiving option in college football last year. That is the Carolina Panthers rookie, Tatura McMillan. I have him actually ranked as my 32nd wide receiver. some of the tight ends. Tyler Warren, who is lethal because he can run, he can pass, and he can catch. He's a triple threat. Indianapolis Colts, they got a really good pick and probably, a staple at tight end for the foreseeable future. And if he stays healthy, he could be there for like a decade plus. I have him ranked as my number 12 tight end. Then, we already talked about it, Brock Bowers. He had an incredible rookie season for the Raiders last year. I just personally don't know if he's going to repeat that same type of production. The 153 targets, 112 receptions for about 1,200 yards and 5 touchdowns. Not saying anything bad about him, and he honestly has a much improved upgrade at quarterback with Geno Smith. But, they got not one but 2 rookie receivers that look like they could do some damage. They just signed Amari Cooper just a few days ago. And like I just said, Ashton Genty is the running back. So they're going to have weapons galore. So for that purpose, I don't really know what he's going to be able to do in fantasy production. But he should still definitely be, a top 5 option. And I have him ranked as my number 3 tight end in fantasy this year. And then we get on to the sleepers, right? So the sleepers, I have Bryce Young as the first one. He started to show last year what he could potentially be. He ended up getting a total of 2,652 total yards, 21 touchdowns, to 13 turnovers. He had 2,400 passing yards. He also sprinkled in another 249 rushing yards. And I think with that rookie receiver, McMillan, they also have some other guys in that offense that could potentially, really help your fantasy team this year. I have him as my 24th ranked quarterback this season, but I also think he could wind up being better than that. Then my next one is Justin Fields. We haven't really seen a lot out of him. His best season so far in the NFL was, in 2022, when he wound up with over 3,000 yards, between 1,100 rushing yards and over 2,200 passing yards. Pittsburgh, he started to look pretty decent. Yeah, he had a few costly fumbles, but I firmly believe if they would have just stayed with him over Russell Wilson, that they would have had, a better chance. And I think that Justin Fields, to me, is kind of like, what they say about AR. If he's going to learn and he's going to get better, he needs to be out on the field. We can't just put him in the game and take him out willy-nilly whenever we feel like it, because the kid's not going to get better that way. He's still young. He's 26, so he's still got some time. But I think bringing him to New York and, getting Aaron Glenn as their new head coach there, and now he's back with his receiver from college in Garrett Wilson. I think that could do some really good things for him, and Breece Hall in the backfield. So that type of offense, I'm not saying it will, but that type of offense could maybe look a little familiar to Philly fans. You could, maybe look a little bit like what the Eagles had last year. Obviously, it's not going to be as good. I'm not saying they're going to get to a Super Bowl. I'm not going to say that Breece Hall is going to run for over 2,000 yards like Barkley, but I think he'll look much improved this year. And if you draft him in fantasy or pick him up, I think that you'll be pretty well off. I have him ranked as my 14th ranked quarterback, I'm sorry. And now for the running backs, I have J.K. Dobbins. He's my number 28th ranked running back. And he is a dual threat type of running back. Last year he had 32 catches, 153 yards to add on to the 905 yards rushing, and he had 9 touchdowns. And he only played 13 games, guys. He missed a couple of games. He's been injury prone throughout his career, but now after last season getting over 1,000 yards with 9 touchdowns, um, and having, they also have the rookie running back in R.J. Harvey, Denver, and they have a couple. They got like 3 or 4 running backs that they're probably going to use. But I wouldn't shy away from Dobbins because of that, because Dobbins is the starter, and Sean Payton loves him, man. He's spoke about that a lot. He couldn't wait to get him in that offense, really. And fun fact for people that don't know this, he's not. I don't think he's the running back coach, but Denver did sign Darren Sproles as a part of that coaching staff. So, hey, Darren Sproles being on that staff, you got to figure that running back room is going to be so much better. So if you can get an R.J. Harvey or you can get J.K. Dobbins, I would try to get them added in. Maybe not have them as your number 1 running back, obviously, but, for fantasy, I think it's a great thing. Next running back, Cameron Scadaboo, who played for Arizona State. And I watched him last year, and he was kind of like of an Ashton Genty-esque type of running back. The kid had, when you look at 2023, only played 2 years in college. Both are Arizona State. But in 2023, he had 1 yard shy of 1,200 yards and 11 total touchdowns. Then you go to last year, the kid had 2,358 yards total with 25 touchdowns. He threw a touchdown actually in both seasons in college. And he's also got hands, too. He had 45 catches last year for 3 touchdowns, on top of the 1,700 yards he ran for, and 21 rushing touchdowns. So that's how you get, 25 total touchdowns. And he threw a touchdown. So, he's starting the season now. I believe he looks like he's going to be the 3rd running back for the Giants. But there's no way he's going to stay there. Eventually, he's going to be splitting carries with Tyrone Tracy. And I think eventually he's going to wind up taking that number 1 running back position. I have him ranked just because he's a rookie and we don't know how soon it's going to be before he gets to the level of production that I believe he can get to. I have him ranked right now as my 35th running back in fantasy. And then I got a couple of receivers and tight ends, and then we're going to log off. I got Calvin Ridley. Is one of my sleeper receivers. I got him ranked as my 24th running back for PPR, or wide receiver for PPR. He had, people forget, but when he was in Atlanta, he was very good. He had his 3rd year in, he had 90 catches, 143 targets, over 1,300, almost 1,400 receiving yards with 9 touchdowns. He had 3 years with at least 1,000 receiving yards. He had 92 or more targets in 5 of his 6 seasons, and then he also had 120 plus targets in 3 seasons. And on top of all that, at least 7 touchdowns in 4 different years. So, if you've seen the chemistry that he was building with Cam Ward in the offseason, it looks pretty impressive. And he's the clear-cut number 1 receiver. So, I would buy stock in Calvin Ridley this year, definitely. The next receiver is Christian Kirk. I have him ranked as my 51st receiver. He is going to start the season as their clear-cut number 2 to Nico Collins. It's all about, what that offensive line is going to look like in Houston. Last year, it didn't look so great. C.J. Stroud spending a lot of time on the ground. He was sacked, I think, the 2nd most of any quarterback in the league. But outside of Christian Kirk and Nico Collins, they got a Dalton Schultz, who's another year older, and they got the 2 rookie wide receivers, plus Tank Dell is still injured, and I don't know if and when he would even be back this season. So, I like Christian Kirk, and if you can buy stock in him, I would definitely do so. Next one is Dante Thornton. He looked pretty good in the offseason. There's not much to be said here, guys. He looks like he's actually going to be Jacoby Myers requested a trade. After that, they went out and they ended up signing Amari Cooper. So they got Amari Cooper, they got Trey Tucker, they got Brock Bowers, Genty, but Dante Thornton could wind up with a reasonable amount of production for a rookie receiver. He didn't really do a whole lot in college. There's not really a lot to talk about there. So I have him unranked in my top 60, but if you are doing a dynasty league, for example, I would buy stock in him. I also have another receiver that's another rookie unranked in my top 60, but I watched him in preseason, and now that Tim Patrick is gone, I think Isaac Tesla could be a very good receiver this year and do a lot of great things for Detroit this year. It looks like he'll probably wind up overtaking Khalif Raymond and be that third receiver. So just another added weapon for Jared Goff, really. Again, he is another one of those guys, like I just mentioned with Thornton. There's not really a lot to talk about with his college game. It's not that he didn't play a lot of games, he just didn't have a lot of production. He went to Arkansas, but I think you should go out and buy some stock in him, and I think it'll really help your team, especially, again, with the dynasty leagues, too. Chigo Kongwu is a tight end sleeper, in my opinion. I have him ranked number 20 of the tight ends, and again, we just talked about with Tennessee and Cam Ward, so buy some pieces from this Tennessee offense if you can. And then I got Cade Otton as my other tight end sleeper. I have him ranked number 16 of the tight ends this year. And he actually last year, he was basically a top 10 tight end when you look at everything. He was the tight end 8 in targets last season with 87. He was tied for 12th in receptions with 59. 14th in receiving yards with 600. Tied for 11th in average yards per catch, 10.2. 10th in yards per game, which was just shy of 43 yards a game. And he was tied for 10th in touchdowns with 4. And he did all this while missing 3 games last year, guys. So I think he has really good chemistry, too, with Baker. So, and Chris Godwin, we don't really know when he's going to be at 100%. Mike Evans is another season older. They do also have that rookie receiver, but Cade Otton, I would get him. In your last couple of picks, nobody's really going to be looking at him. So he's a nice, maybe not a starter. We'll see. He could potentially, be good enough to be a starter this year. But like I said, he did all that and he missed 3 games. So he could potentially be a starter in fantasy this year for you, but definitely as a backup tight end, if you're drafting more than one tight end, that's a great safety valve when your tight end is on a bye week. And so that's basically everything for today, guys. But I'm going to be streaming a lot more, and I'm going to be everywhere. I'm going to be on Kick. I'm going to be on YouTube. I'm going to be on Twitch. So just look for me, and I'm going to have all my information in the description for this, and I'll have my website included and all the places you can either watch or listen to me, because I also am on Spotify and a bunch of other outlets. But anybody that tuned in, I appreciate it. Thank you guys, man. I love football, and once football ends, I'm going to be talking more about basketball. So anybody that loves sports as much as I do, come watch me, share my stuff if you want. I'd appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll be back on the other side. Over and out.